I'm Jenny Bizley. I'm based at the Ear Institute. I'm a neuroscientist and I'm interested in how the brain makes sense of sound. So my big research question is really, how does the brain make sense of the complicated environment that it finds itself in? We have many, many sounds around us, and we have a good understanding of how the ear encodes those sounds, and what we don't know is how the brain actually makes sense of them. So we can kind of take that into a bit more detail. There's probably three questions that my lab looked at. So one is the question of perceptual invariance. So what does that mean? Well, you're able to identify a piano or a violin playing different melodies, even though the actual notes that they're making change all of the time. You can recognize one as being distinctively different from the other. And likewise, if you take 10 people and ask them to say the vowel ah, they'll all say it very differently, but you'll recognize that vowel as the same sound. So we use a variety of listening tasks which allow us to vary different bits of the sound, and we then record neurons at the same time and look at neural activity and try and work out how neural networks actually might support this behavior. Second big question we have is how you make sense of lots of competing sounds. So often you might find yourself in a pub or a restaurant, you can hear many voices, but you only want to listen to one of them. So how does your brain select that sound source while ignoring the others? And the last one, which relates back to that, is how do we use visual information so that we can actually hear better? Can we take what we see to actually help us to pick one sound source out of the many that we have around us? So our research so far has been building upon previous findings which we discovered almost by accident, which is that an awful lot of the auditory cortex, the part of the brain we think does hearing, actually responds to light. And we've been trying to work out why that might be and how that might help. And so far we've kind of made some progress in figuring out where these visual inputs come from. And we've also shown that they can provide information that could potentially help you to solve this problem of picking one voice out from a mixture. And other work that we're doing has also looked at the question of perceptual invariance, and we've recorded neural activity from a bunch of areas of auditory cortex, and we've shown that actually when you're actively listening to a task, neurons are much more likely to behave in a way that might support perceptual invariance than when you're just passively listening. So my research is quite basic science. It's really asking how does the brain work, but of course basic science is still important to society, and for us in particular we're interested in how we can potentially make better cochlear implants and hearing aids, because if we know what information is important to the brain and what a healthy brain uses when listening, perhaps we can better put that in when we have reduced information, as in someone who wears a cochlear implant or wears a hearing aid. And we also have connections to things like the digital music industry, because identifying one source in a mixture is a challenge that people working in that industry face every day, and perhaps a biologically inspired mechanism might allow them to do that better.